Hey everyone, it's David Pike, Motorcity Mechanic. Now it's probably going to take a while for y'all to get on here. I'm used to doing I would say a lot. For a while there I was doing a few Facebook Lives. This is actually kind of a test. This is the first time I've ever actually used the YouTube version, so any of you that are joining this is definitely the first time I've done this on YouTube. Usually it's on Facebook, and I haven't done that in a while. It's been too busy with videos, work, answering questions, stuff like that, so I figured why not jump over to the platform where I've got the most subscribers. So the way this usually works is you just ask me questions. It could be anything Chrysler related, dealership life, anything like that. Now, if you want to bring up other brands, more than likely I'm not going to know anything about that. So you just feel free to ask any kind of questions you have about your vehicle or anything else like that. Otherwise, you control this video or this live feed. Who makes the World engine really? It's a Chrysler branded engine, but the name of the manufacturer, I'm not 100% sure if it's strictly Chrysler or if it's licensed from another company. I used to know that. Then again, the World engine's been out for so long now that I don't really ever get to work on it too much, so I can't remember the details on that. Of course, I could probably pull it up on the computer and find out, but of course, we are stuck with not being able to see what's on the computer. Tip'em, 2012 Dodge Durango. Tip'ems, I was reading an article about that earlier today. For those who don't know, a lot of our fuse boxes on our cars are computers, they're modules. And they have some fuses in there, and there's certain things that don't have fuses. There's also relays that are built into the circuit board. So, Tip'ems, we have some issues. Especially on the 8-year model, there was a recall about the fuel pump. There is no fuel pump relays built into the circuit board. We've had some failures where the Durango either wouldn't start or wouldn't cut off. So the pump would run constantly and actually kill the battery. So yeah, it would cut off technically, but the pump would keep running. We've had some issues with Tip'ems. Anybody that knows anything about Chryslers has probably heard of that as well. That's been going on since probably around 2002, 2003. 2005, Chrysler Town & Country, driver's side. Low beam relay, can't figure it out. Yeah, that goes back to basically a Tip'em issue possibly. I mean, you've got to diagnose the Tip'em on that Chrysler to see what's going on. That requires a scanner to plug up to, they didn't call it a Tip'em back there, but it was called a front control module, where you actually have to tie into it with the scanner, read the data. Also, you can actuate the lights to find out what's going on. If we command high beam or low beam and it's not coming on, then we can check the circuits going back to it, and if it's still not coming on, then we know it's the module itself. Nothing cut and dry. Like I said, it's a possible front control module issue, which is the module that bolts to that fuse box on that van. Oh, we get a lot of questions here, so I apologize if I can't go into real detail. I'm going to kind of jump around on these and try to help as many as I can. So Facebook, I usually don't get as many questions at one time, so please excuse me. All your videos help me a lot, thanks. Thanks, Bobby. I'm glad that they help. That's the whole reason for the videos. Mainly so that you're not tied to having to take it to a repair shop or dealer, or if you do, you got a basic understanding of what's going on. As people say, the 68 RFE, actually the 68 RFE is a great transmission. That transmission replaced items like the 46, 47, 48 that used to be in the Ram pickups back in the day, and also some of the older vehicles, even some of the Jeeps. The 68 is a great transmission. I'll have a valve body problem from time to time, but usually if I have a problem, it's with the solenoid pack. Otherwise, internally, they hold up awesome. It's kind of like when the 5.9s went away. People loved the 5.9s, but they hated the transmission that was bolted up behind it. Now, when the 6.7 came out, people didn't like it because of all the emissions, but they loved the 68. And the 68's evolved. We've got it in a lot of different vehicles now. We've got a 69 that's in the heavy-duty Rams, the larger ones. I've got a 68 in mine. And the 68 basically is the same thing as the 545 RFE. So there's been some similarities. They've done some changes over the years, but fundamentally, you take one apart, you can see all of it. So, like I said, to me it's an awesome transmission. Very few problems. I rebuilt one probably a month ago, and as far as before then, it's probably been about 3 years since I've had to rebuild one. Love all your videos, bro. Thanks, man. Much appreciated. If I could just get these comments to stay up here, I apologize for having to move everything around here. Remember, it's a test, right? Can't figure out why I have no well-being around her. Good, everything's connected. Yes, kind of. I'm sorry, I can't quite read that one. There's a little translation issue there. Let me jump around. Can you wire in a manual fan switch to a 2016 Ram 3500 without throwing codes? My fan comes on too late, and I get heat light sometimes when towing heavy. Yeah, the temp can get kind of high on those. It's usually at 45, 5500s. I know when I'm driving that they'll get past the halfway mark. Now, you can run an auxiliary fan. Now, let's say not tying into the one that's on the vehicle. Leave that alone. If you want to run an electric fan and you've got enough room in the front of the grill, right behind the grill, in front of the radiator intercooler to put one on it, so be it. That'll give you an option as well. But yeah, I wouldn't tie into the electric/hydraulic clutch fan that's on that truck. I don't want you to have any issues there. If you run an external one, you will not set codes, and that will give you the added cooling. Let's see what else we got here. Cool videos. Thanks, Benny. Christopher, 2005 Chrysler 300C. When I put it in drive, there's a thump that comes from the rear end. Thoughts? The first thing would always be to check your U-joints. They don't really have the typical U-joints you're used to on those. They are rubber joints, but there is some flex to it. I'm trying to picture in my mind right now. I'm so used to dealing with the front of that drive shaft, which has that rubber coupler that goes on the transmission. I don't see problems with those, but it's something to check the drive shaft, make sure there's no slack. The other thing is hard engagement like that. I want to say on the transmission you do a quick learn, but that is the 300C, meaning it has a 5.7, meaning it has a nag transmission. There is no procedure you can use for doing a quick learn. I don't have a lot of issues with clunks on those. I'm trying to go through my mind right now. If the other question's your question. For the most part, everything's pretty tight on those. Double check the drive shaft like I said. Make sure you don't have any other issues. It's got CV axles in the rear. Make sure there's nothing obviously damaged back there. Otherwise, for the most part, it's not typical and it's not normal, and not something I really come across. Let's see. Let's go through some more of these. Do you have a video out there on how to change the transmission fluid on the Chrysler 200? Now, Anna, I believe that's probably going to be you're talking about the 9-speed more than likely. 9-speed would be just a drain and fill, and usually you wouldn't even have to touch that unless there was a problem. Now, if you have a different transmission in there, such as a 62TE, now that's a different procedure. I don't have a video on either one of those at the moment. The main reason why I don't have one on a 9-speed is because I haven't had to do anything with those as far as draining and refilling them. I did a video on how to check the fluid and if you need to add it, but as far as draining it, I didn't. Fluid's kind of expensive. Like they said, it goes back to that feel for life, which I don't really agree with, but they classify a lot of our transmissions to where there are no service intervals. They tell you that you shouldn't have a reason to check the fluid unless you have an external leak, which is obvious, or you have a drivability issue. At that point, you shouldn't even have a reason to touch the transmission if none of those apply. But I certainly would keep it in mind as a future video if I come across that. Pinstar engine on the Wrangler with the famous ticking issue. Oh, yes. Everybody knows about 3.6s, I guess you can say. Pinstar, it's a 3.6 liter engine. They also got a 3.2 they came out with recently. You get your ticking noises. Usually on those, if you have any kind of noise related to a 3.6, there's a good chance that you've got a damaged needle bearing on the roller rocker. And once that starts getting damaged, it'll start making noise, and if it goes on for a period of time, that roller will bind up, no longer rotate, and it will start damaging the cam lobe. At that point, there's some play between the rocker arm and the cam, and you get some noise. It sounds kind of erratic. It may be consistent at times, but usually it's kind of an erratic type sound, but it's definitely a metallic sound. You've got that. We've got some issues every now and then on the 3.6s for cracked flex plates. But of course that would be more of a louder sound as well, and you would really notice that one. But yeah, there's no normal tick that I would say that you expect, like a Hemi possibly. on a 3.6, usually a noise is going to be an issue. It depends really how it's, I would say it used to be back in the day if you idle it too much, but these days it seems to be different. We've seen them across the board, just regular driving, we'll find issues. But there's a possibility, like I mentioned, of a roller rocker slash cam lobe. Okay, what we got here? Yeah, fuel pump relay recall on Durango and Grand Cherokees. Exactly. That goes back to that tip one we talked about on that 2012. Someone asked in the beginning. We actually, what we did on that recall, we ran an external relay. It was a relay with a mount and wires. We would take the tip them up. We would take some connectors off the back, cut a couple wires, solder them in different places, and run in a couple external wires as well. That way we had an external relay, and it solved that problem. We've got a couple vehicles that are, they're fleet vehicles for a local company, a construction company that's come down to where we are, and they idle these things all day long. And one of the things they do is they damage the wiring going to the tip them for the fuel pump and the blower motor. And what we've done is we've run external relays for both of those as well. It's not a recommended repair through Chrysler, but it's something that we've seen based off of that recall that they just mentioned. We use that to fix a couple other things as well. I noticed on the 8-speed trans for my 2016 Charger on the first shift when I first start the car from the day, it almost feels like the trans is slipping, but I was told it was normal. 8-speed transmissions and 9 speeds, they are, you'll notice from time to time there's some situations you can pick up that you don't feel right. There are times it's going to shift different at any kind of random moment. They are a fully electronic transmission. They are constantly thinking. They are constantly either getting ready to upshift or downshift. I see I've got a bad connection. So if I'm jumping and cutting in and out, I apologize. I'll just kind of keep going with it and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, they'll have different shifts at different times. They say you can learn different habits of the vehicle by doing a drive learn procedure where we'll reset some stuff at the scanner, we'll drive it so many miles, and we'll do so many different downshifts to where it kind of learns the vehicle, learns the transmission. I ain't going to say that really helps a lot. One of the biggest things to do is to see if there's software updates, because they're constantly changing the software in those vehicles. You'll always come in and be another update, so I'd have to do a double check to see if you have any updates on that one. Otherwise, you're going to expect some odd shifts. One of the biggest complaints was always the 3-2 downshift would be a bump sensation, and then some of them have a sensation they feel around 4th or 5th gear. So it's a transmission that's busy. It's busy all the time. I mean, you've got 8 gears. It's constantly doing something. You know, back when you had a 4-speed transmission, you had a big range of speed before anything would happen. But now on the 8-speed, it's constantly in and out, in and out. It's predicting, are you getting ready to downshift, upshift? So it's always going to give you kind of an odd shift at times. I wish it was a smooth transmission. It's not. It's just erratic. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the beast. Nothing I can physically do to it. I almost have to just deal with it. There's no reason for taking one apart, because you're probably going to have the same outcome when you do. Alright, Bobby, 97 Mazda Miata SA, 4-cylinder, have new plugs and wires. Oh, Bobby, Mazda. Don't know much about Mazdas, my friend. You know how I am. I've been brainwashed at Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. I don't deal with anything else really, because for the last 18 years I've been focused on one thing. Everybody says a car is a car, but not necessarily in this case. Benny, any real news on the Ram FCA emissions? They haven't told us anything. I mean, we've heard different things. You know, for a little bit there, the SCR catalyst was getting ready to be recalled. I heard about those, and now they're coming out. We got different batches of recalls for that. Instead of notifying everybody at once, they get certain groups they notify, they come in, we do the repair, then they keep stocking up on the parts, and they bring in another group. As far as the 3-liter diesel emissions, which I think is what you're speaking of, haven't heard anything other than, I don't know if it was on the website, other than FCA, it may have been FCA, but they are working on getting the 3.0 certification through the federal government. So apparently they're working on something, or they're just wanting to get the final approval that they say everything's fine. It's one of those things that never really trickles down to the dealership. They don't tell us. odds are a lot of you probably hear things before I do. So yeah, I haven't heard anything lately on that. Nothing like a recall coming or that people have called up about. Let's see. I sent you an email about a tow mirrors on my 16-2500 about the turn signals. I apologize about that. I get a lot of emails, usually about 100 a day. Both questions on Facebook, some stuff on Twitter and Instagram, and then a lot on YouTube, and just typical emails. Sometimes I may glance over it and don't pick up on it. Sometimes I may miss something. I try to get a good 90% of them. On yours, I remember now, because I was thinking about it yesterday. I just didn't remember where I saw it at. You had added the mirrors, and you wanted to find the sales code so you can make them work. And let me clarify for everybody that's on here. There's different features you can add on vehicles, such as our trucks. Let's say it didn't come with trailer tow mirrors. In our trailer tow mirrors, we've got puddle lights and we've got LEDs on the outside. When you install them, they will physically bolt up. Yes, they will physically plug in, but not all the features will work. So in order to get that to work, you've got to go onto Chrysler's website, type in the VIN of the vehicle. We need to change the sales codes around. We need to add certain ones, and then we download that back to the vehicle. And once we do, certain things start working. I've got to dive a little more into that to find out exactly what those sales codes are. Usually they're found in the instructions that come, if it's a kit. The kits will have either a CD that we can actually put on the laptop and find out what the instructions are, or a paper copy, and it states in there at the beginning what the sales codes are. Otherwise, I'd have to probably dive some more into it to see if I can find it. If you want, shoot me another email about that. If it was an email or if it was a comment on the channel, do it again, please. That way it'll pop back up again, and I'll be able to try to see if I can find something out for you. I'm getting a little behind on these questions. I apologize. If you had a 6.7, would you delete? Actually, I do have a 6.7, and currently I've got 233,000? Yeah, right around there. I remember seeing that the other day. 233,000 miles, and it's still stock. My rule of thumb on that is, if you're under warranty, no. Wait till you get out of warranty. That way, if something was to happen engine-related, the dealer wouldn't kick it back and say, hey, you just had some modifications done. We're not going to cover it, even though it might not have had any effect. Now, once you get over that 100,000 and you're out of your warranty, I don't see a problem with it. But what I personally would rather do is wait till I had an issue. Because there's going to come that point where the repair is going to be more than the actually modification, or the deletes in this case. If it came to that point, like on my personal truck, if something happened and the cost was more to fix it than to actually do away with it, I'd probably end up doing away with it. And one thing is, there's different mods you can do to these trucks. You can delete things, and there's some things you can just bypass or unplug and run a programmer, and you get the same effect without physically taking anything off. So it comes to that point, are you looking for performance or are you looking for fuel economy? That's the two reasons most people do deletes. And then of course that other thing that comes up, if there is an expensive part failure and you want to do away with all that stuff, such as DEF, I can see that. But on my own personal truck right now, no. I'm still driving stock. I don't have any problems. But that's probably something I might have to deal with in the future. Bad thing is I don't know too much more about those kits, what you can and what you shouldn't do, because I don't never get to see them. It's everything stock that comes in. Benny, what is the normal oil temp on a 3-liter diesel? Why do they go to the larger oil pan? Good question. I don't really know. Excuse me. I get asked a lot about certain specs as far as temperatures on things. And the odd thing is, they don't give us any information. There's nothing in our service information that says this range is good, this range is bad. I really wish they did. And the only way you really pick up on it is if you drive one on a regular basis. And then you see what it does. Like I said earlier on the coolant temp on the 45, 5500s, if I'm driving them, I can see them go past the halfway mark a little. Then I'm starting to say, okay, that's normal. I see this on a lot of different vehicles. I don't know what that spec is on that or what is within the range. I know that if it was, you would definitely have some issues, warning lights, stuff like that. But yeah, they don't give us anything. And I've dived into the owner's manuals before because people have asked me about that. And it doesn't say anything. That's why I used to love a gauge back in the day that had high, low, and then you had the red areas. You had the normal range in the middle. Simple, cut and dry. A lot of the stuff we get now, if you pull up on your clusters, it's digital, it's numbers, it really doesn't mean a lot if you don't know what to look for. And like I said, they don't give us that information, so unless I drive one on a regular basis, I'm not sure. I know that's not a great answer, but it's about the God honest truth right there. That's just how it works. Do you happen to know how much the special transmission fluid for the Dodge Darts? I don't know. I don't have to deal with that transmission too much, so I apologize. I don't really know right off the top of my head. One of my coworkers used to jump on here a lot, and he would already be online with his laptop and be able to type in parts and everything for people and give you that answer right then and then. But Kurt don't work. I'm getting too fast here. Kurt doesn't work with us anymore, and that's who usually would handle that. And he was my go-to guy for parts. I usually don't bother the parts department with much stuff anymore, but he could have told you right off the bat. But personally, I'm not really sure. I have to keep it in mind. I might even have a chance to check this week, maybe, and make a note of it somewhere. So if you ask again, Christopher, I've had my 2012 Chrysler 200 for 3 years. A few problems, but overall an okay car. I'm going to trade it in on something stronger. Do you recommend the Pentastar engine? Pentastar engine's great. Like I said, it's like anything. The first generation something comes out, you're going to have problems. I don't like staying or buying something the first year. Like, for example, they came out in 2011, so we had some issues. Over a period of time, they've revised everything. Everything's gotten better. I'm sure as they revise certain things, new things that creep up, like 2014, we've had the problems with the oil coolers leaking because they revised the style of it. And of course, the revised part didn't last well, so they fixed that. Pentastar engine's got a lot of power for its size. I mean, it's our go-to engine across the board. And rumor is that we're going to see a lot more of it in the future. Everything for a possible twin-turbo version. Because, unfortunately, there's word that the Hemi will be going away. Is it documented proof? No. But there's mention that 2018 may be the last year of the Hemi, possibly. Not completely across the board, because we'll be keeping items like the 6.4 possibly. We'll still be running it in the Hellcat, items like that. But for the most part, the 5.7 may be going away. It's an older pushrod engine. Emission standards are creeping up to where it's going to be not effective to have that engine no more. Power-wise, it's great. Torque, awesome. But yeah, emissions is going to put a stranglehold on it, just like it's done every generation before that and every other engine we've ever had. Hopefully, maybe they'll do some negotiations, work it all out. It'd be awesome to keep the Hemi for even longer. But the Pentastar 3.6 is going to be our go-to engine. And it, for the most part, is now. We've got our 4 cylinders, but as far as any kind of V6, that is the go-to one. And the power it puts out is amazing. You're putting out more than what most V8s used to put out. Yes, like I said, they had some issues, but for the most part, they're holding up well. I've only had, well, I may have to put one engine in, but that's questionable about it being an engine issue and not an operator issue. But otherwise, they're good engines. You're going to see a lot more 3.6s. A lot more. But yeah, if you can get a Hemi, awesome. Pentastar, yes, great. That's what I would go with. Thanks for the answer. You are welcome. The latch on the armrest is broken. Any suggestions on how to get it open? Latches are weird. Imagine you get a door that the latch won't open. What are you going to do? Bust the door panel open, whatever. Chances are you're going to damage something to get to it, and then you still got to break it apart to get it open. On the glove box, if the latch don't work, that can be tricky. There's a possibility that something's going to get damaged trying to get it apart. It's just a matter of how far you want to go in. There's no cut and dry answer on that type of situation, because at that point it's out of the realm of normal. Something's broke, you can't get it open, you're going to have to get it open somehow, which usually requires some force because there are no external fasteners you can take loose to open it that way. It's not going to be a pretty sight. Hopefully snatching it up would be hard enough. Something's going to break, let's put it this way. Something's going to break in order to get it open. What's going to break is going to be the issue. We're going to damage the console or just the armrest. It's just an armrest, so be it. Be prepared for that. Otherwise, there's nothing to physically get in there to take loose to make it open. If the timing belt breaks on a PT Cruiser while driving, does it ruin the engine? No, it does not, Marty. That's one of my biggest things. If you've been with the channel long enough, you've seen I did a series on PT Cruiser timing belt and water pump replacements. It was a 7-part. It's something that I really wanted to do for the longest while, and I finally got around to doing it. took a while. Hopefully I covered everything, but one of the things I've always heard people say, and don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming them for this because it's what they're being told, but on a PT Cruiser, it is an interference engine. And for those who don't know, interference engine means that if something happens, such as a timing belt break, there's a possibility that the valves will be in such a position that the pistons will smack them, bend them, and possibly damage other components. Hopefully the least you get is a bent valve and not a damaged piston. Well, what I have found over the years is even if that belt breaks, those camshafts find a what I call a sweet spot, and they stay there, and they don't make any contact with the pistons. Now, I know this for sure because we work right off the interstate, so we get a lot of interstate traffic, a lot of stuff being towed in that's been damaged while traveling. They break going 80 miles an hour. We don't have any problems. I've gone up there, cranked them up, heard them, knew exactly what was going on. The belts broke. I've heard people comment all the time that, oh, he just damaged the valves because he spun it because the belt was broke. No, I did not. I verified that because I actually did the video on it, fixed the car, no problems. So everyone that I've had come in with a broken timing belt, I've had zero problems with the valve train. No bent valves. I put a belt on it. I'm good to go. So yes, it is an interference engine, but the way I look at it is this. If you personally, physically put the belt on wrong and get everything out of sync, at that point the piston has the ability to hit the valves. Otherwise, if the belt breaks, those cams find a sweet spot, and that sweet spot protects those valves to where they don't get hit by the piston. So technically, yes, it is an interference engine, but no, it does not get damaged going down the road. And that's why a lot of people get rid of their PT Cruisers, because the belt has broke and the shop told them that, hey, you need to replace the engine, it's going to be too expensive to fix. And in the end, all it needed was a belt. I get that time and time. With that video, it's one of my best videos out there as far as people watching and commenting on. I can't tell you how many people have either fixed their own vehicle because a mechanic told them it was broke, or they fixed it because a mechanic said he wouldn't work on it, or they bought a vehicle for $300-400 because the belt was broke and someone said it damaged the engine. So you are good to go if it breaks, trust me on this. But yeah, 100,000 miles, a good interval to change it. That way you're not stuck on the side of the road at least. It looks like I'm probably not going to get to all these questions, but I will do my best. We are hanging a 99 3500 transmission problem. Oh, we are having, I guess that's what they mean. Till I moved wiring away from the alternator. Yeah, you can have different electrical issues. That older transmission wasn't fully electric, but it did have an electric governor and a few other things for overdrive. So yeah, you could have different issues. It could have been anything from interference from the alternator circuit bleeding over, if some wiring was somewhere it didn't need to be. Anything touching, anything rubbing, stuff like that. But yeah, those were notorious for different issues such as governor pressure sensors and stuff like that. Great videos, great work. Thank you. Hyundai accent. Oh no, no Hyundais, please. We'll see. I'll read it and see what I can do. While driving, you hit the brake. I hear a knuckle. Hang on. I hear a lot of these words are getting mistyped, so I apologize if I'm reading them odd because they're not making much sense. I brake here. Knuckle wants it to disappear to me, but as soon as I hit the brakes again, it comes and goes. Mohammed, I'm not quite sure what the complaint is. I can't quite make out from the writing. I know it's a translation issue, and I apologize. Hyundais I'm not too familiar with, so once again, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, I can do my best on. A Hyundai, I'm not really sure to tell you where to look on that, other than making sure nothing's loose in the front end. You could have a lower ball joint or control arm bushing, something to that effect. It's not where it needs to be, so when you hit a brake, you may get an audible sound or even a vibration or a knock. Since Dodge has the 2014 all-wheel drive Journey that is built in Mexico and the 2018 being built in Italy, good or worse than Mexico? You know what, for the most part, a lot of the vehicles we work on, we don't realize where they're coming from. There's only one instance where I heard there was an issue, and that was actually with the 3.6 liter. When the cylinder heads we were having issues with, there were some of them where the casting, the machining was done down in Mexico, and they did a real bad job. They didn't take all of the sand or whatever out of the molds they were using, and it was causing rough casting, debris to be in the heads and cause engine problems. For the most part, other than that, we don't have a lot of issues as far as where they're made. As mechanics at the dealership, we usually can't pick up on that other than the brand. You know, there's certain things like Renegades are more than likely made over there in Turkey. At least last time I looked on one of the shipping invoices. As far as the others, for the most part, we don't really know. A problem's a problem. I haven't been able to isolate it down to where one's made or not, other than that head issue that I mentioned a minute ago. After you finish this topic, how's about the P2588 turbocharger speed sensor? Change the wire, but no change. Check engine light still on. What's next? A lot of your, now we're talking about a 6.7 liter diesel on that question. The turbocharger has an electronic actuator, so it can vary the geometry of the turbo, which basically gives it an electrically controlled trailer brake basically. And it actually controls the output of the turbo as far as boost. There's a sensor that's built on there that detects everything. Now, on that particular code, just shooting from the hip without being able to look at the trouble tree for that, could be something electrical or something with the turbo. When it's something with the turbo, and then you got either one of two things: try to have it rebuilt or have it replaced. Sometimes you can do a cleaning, but in order to do a cleaning, a certain code has to be active, and it requires the Chrysler related scanner for that, and a special apparatus to put cleaner in it. But if you want, shoot me an email or a message about that, and I'll try to see if I can find out a little more about the code right off the top of my head. That's basically all I can give you. Good or best rebuild third gen coming injector vendors. I don't really know. On those, all I usually get is the Mopar branded stuff, because of course, being at the dealership, we go through the parts department. That's where they make their money. Everything's going to be Mopar or Cummins related. As far as getting them rebuilt, we don't rebuild them or basically send them out to have them rebuilt. It would be replacement. And for the most part, I don't have a lot of issues with the injectors. It's only been 4 or 5 over the years I've had to put in. For the most part, the Cummins holds up great. If you have injector issues, usually it's rare that it's the electrical portion of the injector is bad. Usually it's something in the fuel that's gotten in there and damages it, because they hold up great. If I hear it's an injector problem, I want to see it, because it's rare. Like I said, other manufacturers, you replace them. Cummins, you'll get them from time to time, but it's not as often as the others. Since you sent me an email and I didn't respond as well, apologize for that, sir. It's all about my Dodge 2012 Caravan cat converters. I have check engine light. Can I change it myself? Catalytic converters are basically going to set an efficiency code if there's a problem. And basically what that means is you got upstream O2 sensor that reads before it, you got your catalytic converter, and then you got a downstream O2 sensor. Now, the computer's looking for certain readings from both of them. Basically, it wants to see a change from the upstream to downstream, letting it know that the catalytic converter is doing its thing. Now, if it doesn't get the appropriate reading, it's going to go more than likely saying there's a catalyst efficiency. Now, that doesn't also always mean that it's a catalytic converter. It could be a lazy O2 sensor. If one of them's reading slower than what it's supposed to, it could affect that reading and cause that code. Now, would I say replace both O2s and the catalytic converter and take care of it? Oh, sure it would. But is it possibly one or the other? Definitely. Now, what they want you to do is, usually they want to know if you've replaced one of them already. If you've replaced the upstream already or the downstream, there's a chance that it could be the other O2. One thing is, sometimes we have codes that come up that are software related and not a physical problem. On that year model, I need to know the VIN. With the VIN, I could also need to know the code. With the VIN and the code, I could tell you if there is a software update or if it's going to need some kind of item replaced. It could be anything like I mentioned about a catalytic converter or an O2. But to answer your question, yes, you can physically replace them yourselves. It may be a little awkward to get to. A lot of the exhausts, the bolts may be rusted. Some of the pipes may be stuck together fairly well, and it's kind of hard to get apart. You may have to apply some heat. But physically, you can do it if you like. Appreciate all y'all showing the love. Thank you, thank you. That's good. The 5.7 had issues with the bolts on the exhaust manifolds being over torqued and results of exhaust leaks. That should have become a recall in my opinion. You know what? Believe it or not, I believe it was a recall, but it only applied to certain years in a certain range. It wasn't all of them that I was seeing. It was some of them. and I can't remember off the top of my head right now. I believe it was a recall, not a bulletin or anything like that. It's been a while. It didn't cover many years. What's odd is it's only on the trucks, so you know it's the trucks and sometimes the Durangos, which lets you know that's design of that manifold. Because we do not have any broken bolts that I see on 300s, Chargers, Challengers, Magnums. All those have been holding up great, no breakage, which is great because you couldn't get to them if you wanted to without taking the cylinder head off. The trucks, we also had some problems back in the day with the 4.7 liters and the Durangos and the Dakotas and as well. They would break. They were a lot easier to get off though, because usually when they broke flush, it was flush with the manifold, not with the head. I hate seeing them break. I'm kind of like you. I wish there was a recall, but you know, I don't have the power to say why they don't. There's a lot of things you see that's kind of a regular occurrence, but that never falls into a recall. You don't want it to come out of no one's pocket by any means, but unfortunately it's the world we live in. It's the things I have to deal with. But I have seen quite a few of them lately. I had one, matter of fact, Friday I had to put 2 bolts on one side. Not hard to do. It's fairly cut and dry. Just drill 2 small holes, extractors to back it out. I usually don't have problems. Some of the other technicians in the shop, I've seen them drill thumb-sized holes in there, have to take the cylinder heads off, replace them. For the most part, I've had pretty good luck. But yeah, it is fairly common on the trucks. You do see it, as you saw right there with your question. Like I said, I don't know why they don't recall certain things. I know they don't want to spend the money. I get it. They just don't want to be willy-nilly about recalling everything. Sometimes it takes a push. Sometimes it takes a shove, for sure. But I feel your pain. I really do. Trust me. Alright. Alright, let's see where we are. Catch up here. I just bought a 2017 2500 with the rear air suspension. There's no info on how it really works. You're able to explain a little bit on how it operates. Thanks, from Windsor. You know, the thing about those air suspensions, it's odd about certain systems we put on these vehicles. Some of them we have a lot of problems with, some we have none. To be honest with you, I have no problems out of those systems. We've had them on the Grand Cherokees for a while, and we've got them on the trucks. I remember a little bit about the operation on the Grand Cherokee, and I'm not sure if it's 100% the same as the truck. The Grand Cherokee used both, if I remember right, nitrogen and also air from the air compressor to do certain things. The truck I don't remember right off the top of my head, and the bad thing is usually you don't learn about something or dive into it till you actually have a problem, and then you've got to do the research. The trucks, 0 problems. Been holding up great. It's a system that, like I said, no problems. It's kind of like the electric power steering systems we've got on a lot of vehicles now. We've gone from belt-driven power steering pumps to electrically operated. They call them electro-hydro because there's some hydraulic fluid in there, but it's got an incorporated electric pump all built in one. 0 problems out of that. So I don't know right off the top of my head. Like I said, I hadn't had the chance to dive into it because I haven't had the need as of yet, but they've been holding up great. Love your videos. Thanks for the help. I recently did my 67.5 service on my 6.7. Awesome. 67.5. For all those who don't know what that is, that's on our 6.7 liter Cummins. It's a service interval and a message that comes on your display telling you there's a couple things you need to do depending on the year. You may have to do a crankcase filter on the newer ones, or also you need to do clean the EGR valve and EGR cooler. But there was a cutoff point in years, and I don't remember exactly where, but I keep seeing it in the service info. So if any of you are doing that service, you can always email me or let me know, and I'll try to research it your year to find out when that cutoff was, because you may just have to replace the crankcase filter. So it's something you can do yourself. All 3 of those things you can do yourself, and the videos are out there as you just read. And that's one of my bigger videos, believe it or not, as well. I get a lot of replies and a lot of views on that one, which is awesome. And if any of you are going to do it, one of the best places to get your stuff from is from Gino's Garage. You can go online, ginosgarage.com. They're just a couple hours from where I'm located. Awesome group of people. If you know anybody that's got a Dodge Diesel, they probably bought something online. They probably bought it from there. These people know what they're doing and what they're talking about. Marty, thank you for your answer. You're welcome, Marty. Appreciate the question. I have a two-wheel drive 2014 1500 Sport Crew long wheelbase. Will it look bad with a 2-inch front lift level in your opinion? I got a 2007 3500 Mega Cab and people keep saying the front looks too low. I've seen issues on some of the vehicles, mainly 4-wheel drives, where they add that leveling kit. And then of course they get the notorious death wobble afterwards. Excuse me. Looks is up to you. It's one of those things, if you're going to carry a load in the back, then it might look awkward when it starts squatting down in the rear and the front's raised up. Otherwise, for the most part, the reason why they do it is because they want it to be kind of level when you put a load in there. It's all about personal appearance. A lot of people put the leveling kits in the front just to give it that couple more inches to where it looks nice. It's a personal thing, and like I said, I have seen in some rare occasions, excuse me, trying to catch my breath here at the same time, where they will have issues after they do it. So be wary of it. If you're 4-wheel drive, you may have to wonder about it. 2-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive. I'm trying to think what the leveling kit's going to do or how it's going to be installed on a 2-wheel drive, but I guess it ain't too much different. It's all personal opinions. If you think it's going to work well for you, great. It's just I don't know. I just don't see the need on mine, for example. If I do it, it does look lower in the front. To me, it has kind of a cool little rake look. But once again, it's just my personal opinion. Wasn't the Chrysler 2.7 the worst engine ever made? How did you deal with it at Dale? Oh, 2.7s. Wow. Worst engine made for Chrysler? I would pretty much put it up there. Yeah. It's an odd design. Didn't care much for it. Initially, when the 2.7s first came out, we had a lot of sludging issues. Toyota had something similar. I believe it was Toyota, and they had twice as many issues as we ever did on the sludge issues on the 2.7. Now on the 2.7, it didn't matter how often you changed the fluid. We had customers that never came in. We'd find sludge. We had customers that we changed oil since day one. They had sludge. A lot of it, they said, was due to the catalytic converters being so close to the engine, so close to the oil pan, that it was just cooking the oil. And then after that, that was the biggest issue with those, is sludge. Now, of course, the water pump became chain driven, which was inside the timing chain cover. So you had to take a lot of stuff, intake, both valve covers, the front of the engine apart, just to put a water pump in. But yeah, they had issues. And if they lost oil pressure, the chain could come loose and jump around. Not a good thing. I would agree with you. That was by far probably not our best engine. If you buy used cars online or anything, and you'll see that someone says, hey, it needs an engine, or the engine's been replaced already, especially if it's got a 2.7. And when they deal with it how we deal with it at the dealer. Usually it was replaced. If sludge, it got replaced. If it was a water pump, sometimes it was high enough in mileage. We have a rule that we don't go in engines internally if it's over 100,000. Sometimes they got engines or they went somewhere else. But for the most part, we had those bigger issues with engines. But as far as the minor stuff, they were cut and dry. Water outlets, stuff like that. Wrong gear ratio. I took the Dodge, my Durango to Dodge, and they changed the transmission fluid and filter, and everything is fine now. Thanks. I do remember yours now. Thank you. Sometimes these transmission problems, usually let's start like this. When a person asks me a question, sometimes I like to let everybody in on what's going on so they got an understanding. A lot of our transmissions, we can have issues with electronic, excuse me. If there's a slippage in a gear, it can set a code for a gear ratio error. And basically that's what was going on with that question. Was I believe they had gear ratio errors in multiple gears. It could have been second, third, and fourth. And that was the only codes. Now those codes are very vague. All they say is that there was a problem. It doesn't say what caused the problem. Now there's other codes that can pinpoint things, but in that case it's more like check the fluid level, make sure that's okay. And in that case he had the fluid level he had the fluid changed, and that took care of it. So that's cool. Simple repair, just basic maintenance, back on the road without having to take that transmission out and get it rebuilt. Awesome. You saved me thousands of dollars with my 2012 2500. Can't thank you enough. My buddy has a P0692 code. Is that a fan clutch replacement, or should it be something else? I don't know right off the top of my head with that. I want to say, unfortunately, this isn't Facebook. Facebook would keep track of that question for me. Send me a comment either on one of my videos or email me directly at david@motorcitymechanic.com, and I'll try to look that code up and see if I can tell right off the bat. There were some older models that if we had certain codes, it wasn't the fan clutch. It could have been anything from the alternator or the there were some alternator issues at one point. Sometimes the crank sensor. We had some that bled over and would cause certain codes to come up. I'd have to do a little research on that one. But hey, I appreciate that comment. I'm glad you got to save a lot of money off the videos. That's what it's all about. My hat's off to you for following the directions in these videos and getting it done. Andrea, thanks for the response. No, thank you. Love the videos. Cruise control question, 3rd gen Ram, 1500 4.7. I can turn it on and cruise. Lights on the dash, then shuts off. Place brake switch already. What would you check next? Any kind of issue like that, I would definitely check for codes. And usually your simple code reader may not access everything. You need to go in there, see if there's any codes, and then after that there's data. We've got certain readings we can go in there and look at. We can look at the cruise control being on. We can see different states of the switches, what's going on, and what is causing it to turn off. There's no one thing I can tell you to check right now. Yeah, you went with one thing that was obvious, a brake pedal switch, which actually is one of the inputs. But it's going to take some more diving in, usually with a scanner at this point, to see if there's codes and to read the data. Knocking, but car didn't overheat. 2014, 300 base model. How much to repair? It depends on the engine. Price I can't really tell you right now. It depends on the engine and what the noise is. You got a 300, let's say it's an older model and it has a 3.5 liter, you could have some valve train issues where you may have to replace the rocker arm assemblies and maybe even take the head off because it may have damaged the valve stem guide. A Hemi, you may have a problem with a cam and lifter again. But price-wise is going to vary drastically. I'm not good at really quoting prices, mainly because I can get the labor for stuff. Parts department adds their prices, service writer goes over there and gets the estimate to the customer. So usually prices, unless it's something I'm physically doing myself on the side or something, I honestly couldn't tell you because it can be all over the board. And it really depends on what the knock is. It's a 2014, so it's definitely not a 3.5 as I'm reading here. 300 base, that could be a, you're looking at a 2014, that's a 3.6 or a Hemi. So 3.6, like I said, could be rocker arm and the camshaft, and also, or one of the camshafts because there's total 4. Hemi could be one of the lifters and a camshaft. It really depends. That's about the only 2 possible noises you'll see on both engines. Being that it's 2014, it's right at 3 years old, so there's a possibility it may be covered under powertrain. So if you know your mileage and stuff like that, or if you need me to, I can at least check to see what your warranty is right now. You just email me the VIN over there to david@motorcitymechanic.com, and I can dive a little more into it because powertrain does go up. It's more than 336, so you may still have something that's covered under warranty depending on what it is. 2010 Ram Cummins factory electric trailer brake will show on the display. Trailer disconnected with no trailers attached. The trailer brake things are an odd situation. They don't give us anything to check that with. Nothing whatsoever. We can go in and we can check codes, stuff like that. But as far as trailer brake testers, I had to do a review on one from, I believe it's IPA products. They're Innovative Products of America, IPA. They had something you can plug in, you can see the actual output. To me, it's something every dealership should have, but they don't. It's something I just personally have, and I was lucky to get that. That's going to take some diving into. There's some wiring you might have to test. Like I said, first thing is see if there's any kind of codes. Maybe there's some kind of software update. We do have updates on the integrated brake controllers, and I can't remember what the symptom is, or sometimes in the service information where they break down what the software update is going to be doing, it'll say why. I don't remember if that's one of the options or not. It sounds familiar for some reason. Usually I just click on it and do the update, and I don't really read too much into them. But that's something to check for software update, check for codes, and then at that point it's going to take some further diag. It's not a common issue, but it's something you definitely need to check into. And it's going to take probably a dealer to do that based off of the equipment they're going to need, such as that scanner. It's nothing cut and dry. I wish it was, I could tell you. I've got an issue with my 2013 Dodge 2500. When turning on the cruise control, the box between the tach and speedometer, the bottom half blanks out at set miles per hour, where the odometer at the bottom stays blank. Problem you're probably going to see, and it's not common, but any kind of display issues on that cluster, there's a possibility it's going to be a cluster issue. Everything should stay lit up. There should be no reason for the odometer to go out. It could be something going on with the cluster itself. The main thing is, once again, we got to dive into checking codes on that one. Your basic code reader is probably not going to work. Your basic code readers check usually one of a few things. They can do airbag codes, ABS, and powertrain control modules, PCMs. But as far as your cluster and everything else, they're not going to get that in depth. They're not going to cover those modules unless you got a high-end scanner. The dealership's going to have everything you need. Maybe some high-end repair shops might have it, but that's going to be the next step. We need to see if there's codes, and we also need to go into that cluster, and we need to look at that data that's disappearing on the cluster. Not just that, we can run a self-test with that and see that everything lights up as it should. It's kind of odd that it's happening when you turn the cruise control on, but there's a possibility, like I said, it could be a cluster issue. Okay, that's back to the trailer brake. Usually happens when the vehicle is in reverse, stick shift 4x4, and brakes applied. Issue comes and goes. On occasion, we'll do it with vehicle going forward. Brakes applied, no issue with trailer attached. Usually, like I said, we don't have a lot of problems with those integrated brake controllers. Sometimes it ends up being the guy's trailer, and we end up having to get another one on the lot as far as truck, plug up to it, and see if it goes away. If it's the same, we know it's a trailer. If it goes away, it's a truck. But very few problems. I want to say you found 1 or 2 wires over the years, which maybe there's something going on. The last one we had one issue with was they had removed the bed and hooked some stuff up so they could do some long haul trucking, and some of the wires had rubbed somewhere where it didn't need to. It may be in the, I can't remember if the wires were, I think it could have been anything from the brake circuit touching that as well and setting a false code. Definitely a visual inspection for sure. Go to the back, work your way forward the best you can. Follow all the wires, make sure nothing's pinched somewhere, something hasn't been rubbing on anything. Let's see, I got Please talk about the problem with the rocker arms on Pentastar 3.6. It's necessary to change rockers. Yeah, I'll bring that back up again. We talked about it earlier, but yeah, it's a continuing problem. I say continuing problem. It's something I see somewhat on a regular basis, and it gets brought up a lot. 3.6 liter has 4 camshafts, 2 intake, 2 exhausts. They use lifters. They don't use push rods. They got a lifter, has a rocker arm, and then from the rocker arm it goes to the valve train, and that's the cam lobe. There's needle bearings on that roller rocker, and the needle bearings will start to fail. When they fail, at some point the roller rocker no longer spins. Then it just stays stuck there, and it's going up against a cam lobe that's constantly moving, and it grinds a groove into the cam lobe. So you'll start getting a noise. It's usually erratic, but usually you hear it. You'll listen to it. It'll come and go, and it's very erratic. It's not a constant sound. Once it gets worse, it can become a constant sound. The biggest thing is isolating what side of the engine you hear it coming on. You could get a misfire code, which would certainly help you, or you're sitting there listening and say, okay, it's on the driver's side, passenger side. Now I've got to take that intake, if I need to, off and get that valve cover off and do a visual inspection. There should be visual damage to that cam lobe. You should see it. And then of course, when I do that, if I find, like, let's say it's the driver's side exhaust rocker arm that's causing me a problem, I'll replace all those rocker arms for that exhaust cam, and I'm probably going to have to replace the exhaust cam because it's damaged. I'll do it that way. I only replace the rockers on the camshaft I'm taking off. I can't just go in there and change all of them because, of course, Chrysler is not going to pay me for doing that. It's kind of overkill. It's preventing future problems, but unfortunately we're only supposed to repair what the problem is right then. So 3.6s, you'll see that from time to time. And like I mentioned before, a lot of them are the higher mileage. For example, taxi cabs. We got a couple minivans that are taxi cabs we have issues with. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't happen to the average person. We do come across it. It's that style of rocker arm. The needle bearing roller style just, I don't know, it doesn't hold up that great. Chevrolet's had problems with the LS motors with the same issue. We've got problems with the Hemis if they sit there and idle for too long. It's the same thing. The lifter has a roller on the end and needle bearings, so it's constantly moving. The rocker arms on the 3.6 have the roller with the needle bearings. They're constantly moving. It's a design that just, I wish there was an alternative, but that's what it is. Someone needs to come up with a better style. For the most part, they hold up well, but you see it, and if you're at a dealership, you'll see more and more of them, so you start seeing a common problem. Okay. How to take the air out of the cooling system on a 67.5 service, step by step, please. I just want to be sure I saw your video. Thank you, sir. It depends, Mike, on the year of the engine. And I'll break it down two ways. If you got the radiator cap on the radiator, then that means you've got the bleeder screw up there on the neck of the coolant pipe leading up to the EGR cooler. If that's the case, you just take the bleeder bolt or screw out, you add coolant till you finally get coolant coming out. Now, if it's different and it's got the radiator cap on the pressure tank that's mounted on the firewall, it's best to use an air bleeder. It's a system apparatus we hook up that pulls a vacuum on the coolant system, gets all the air out, collapses all the rubber hoses. At that point, we can open up a valve, the hoses into a container of coolant, and it sucks coolant in there. That way we don't get no air. Now, not everybody has something like that. Now, the way the service information is, you take that pressure tank cap off, you fill it up where it needs to be, you cap it back off, you run the RPMs up for a while, get the temperature to where it's about halfway, cut it off, let it cool off, open the cap, top it off, and repeat this procedure. Now, it may take multiple tries till you finally get the sweet level, the sweet spot of that level. Excuse me. But yeah, that one's, it takes multiple tries. Even if I bleed it with the air system on the one that's got the pressure tank with the cap, I still got to drive it up the road about 10 minutes, come back, and then recheck it. And I might still have to top it off some, so I can't necessarily get all of it out, but I do try. Okay. Otherwise, like I said, if it's got the bleed screw, take it off, add it till it comes out. Otherwise, you're going to have to do it multiple times if you don't. Let's see where we are again. I kind of lost track here. What's the best way to adjust your rockers on a 3.3 liter Chrysler? Adjusting rockers. There is no adjustment on a 3.3. They are just tightened down. The only engine we have that you adjust the rocker arms on is the diesel, the 6.7 and the 5.9s. Otherwise, none of our other engines do you adjust anything on the rocker arms other than tighten them down. Email is david@motorcitymechanic.com. Just send me a message there or whatever you got. Does warranty cancel out if I change my own oil? Do not have receipts for oil changes. The only time you really need to worry about the oil change receipts is if you have anything like an engine failure. Lifter noise, anything like that, the dealer shouldn't say anything about that. I mean, unless they pull it and they find out, for one, that the oil change sticker, if you've got one, is way overdue, or the oil is as black as can be. That's when the question starts coming up. Otherwise, mainly with engine failures, do you need to worry about that? You have something going on, like in that Instagram photo I put up a while back with that, had a balancer on a 3.6 that I could actually move in and out. Then we asked for oil change receipts, and that got kind of shady. We're still not sure what the outcome's going to be on that one. Oil was as black as you can. I've dipped it in there, and I swear it's the color of my shirt. You would think it was diesel oil. But definitely, if you do change your own oil, keep accurate receipts, everybody. If you haven't changed anywhere else, keep those receipts as well. You never know if it comes up, is questioned if you have any kind of failure. Any of your earnings for a 2011 Ram would be appreciated. Okay. Alright, we got some little misquoting here. I'm not sure, Shelby, what you're talking about. Any of your, warnings, I hear you corrected. Any of your warnings for a 2011 Ram 4x4 would be appreciated. I've watched all of them so far. It's a good pickup. Transmission's great. Engine, it just depends. You got a 3.6, you could have problems with oil pressure sensor. That's about the main thing. Being that year model, or the oil pressure bypass valve, which I did a lot of videos with Dorman on that because I started seeing problems and I got with them. They fixed it. They sent repair kits out, which was awesome that they stepped up. That's about the only thing. Otherwise, the Ram is a good truck. Nothing really common, I would say, to stay away from or to look out for. You may have on the Hemi, like someone's already mentioned, you may have some exhaust manifold bolts break. Usually the rear ones might start breaking And the only issue you have with that is when you start it up, you hear a tapping noise, and usually if in a minute or two it goes away till it cools off again. Otherwise, I'm trying to go through my mind right now and think between the two engines. Nothing really too common other than those items I mentioned. It's one of those vehicles I wouldn't stay away from. If you wanted to get one, hey, great. I think they're awesome. Okay. Please excuse me as I'm trying to catch up here. I'm going to go through each one of these. Alright, let's see. Ed here. Mike, thanks for having this venue. I have a 2014 Ram 4x4 2500, and I always have hard times getting it to align. When the machine lines it to factory specs, it will still pull to the right. Right below you, someone had mentioned about the track bar bracket cracked. A visual inspection of the front suspension would be great. Pulling can be a couple things. You can have your alignment specs perfect and still have a pull. It could end up being a tire. In that case, if you know everything's perfect, you need to rotate the tires side to side, both sets. You could try one set if you want, but I would just go both sets side to side and see if everything changes. Otherwise, the specs should tell you everything, unless you got an issue possibly with a brake caliper sticking, something to that effect that's not alignment related, or something that's moving. Even, they can check the alignment and it'd be great, but if something's left loose, or for example a track bar bracket being cracked or something like that, and there's any kind of flex, once you go down the road you could get different readings. So it could be perfect on the alignment rack till you go out there. A good visual inspection, rotating the tires side to side, and making sure you don't have any kind of brake issues whatsoever would be the key there. Brian, thanks for your videos. Thank you, Brian, for watching them, my friend. 2003 Durango, new motor trans, all sensors on the vehicle from dealer still, idles weird, trans doesn't shift right, no codes on the computer. That's going to be a hard one. There are those situations like when some of y'all email me, I tell you that it's hard to describe in words or to have it in your mind what to go to. It's one of those trial and error type things. One of those things you got to get your hands on to see how things go. You got to look at the data. You got to see different things. You said you've replaced a lot of things. Weird idle. Now let me just spit this out there real quick. 2003 Durango. So I'm thinking 4.7 liter maybe. So please excuse me if I'm wrong. I did a video on a 4.7 a while back. 4.7s are somewhat common to have problems with the TPS sensor. Not to set a code, but you would have erratic idles kind of flaring up and down, and that could affect your transmission going in and out of overdrive and different things. The way I could always tell that was I could go out under the hood, either watching the data with a scanner and wiggling the TPS sensor, trying to grab it at the sensor itself at the connector and wiggle it. And if I could get a flare in the RPM or see a difference in reading, or if I was graphing it and see a spike, I knew I had a problem with the TPS and sometimes the connector. That's one thing you can check into, because I know you said you put a motor in it and a lot of different sensors. I don't know if that's one of the sensors, but usually when you do an engine, you're just swapping components from one to the other. You would have took the intake off of one and more likely bolted it onto the replacement, so it would have been using the same intake, same TPS. That's something to check into. That may or may not have something to do with it. 4 TPS sensors, wow. So that may not be it. And like I said, before I would have thrown one on anyway, I would have looked at the scanner readings and I would want to see a fluctuation. But as far as anything else I can think of, nothing's coming to mind right now. It's something you just had to go through and monitor the data and try to eliminate item by item without throwing something at it. You would hope for a code, but in this situation you're not getting one. But yeah, you may have, and it goes back to the other thing, you may have put a TPS on it, but what if it's the connector and it's a pin fitment issue, that it's the same connector being plugged into new TPSs to where over a period of time it's causing issues. It goes back to that monitoring while you're using the scanner, wiggling it to see if there's any fluctuation or changes. Usually it'd be, I wouldn't say always, but for the most part, when you move it, you can hear the RPM jumping up or jumping down. and then you know, okay, I'm probably at the right spot. It goes back to the whole wiggle test that they tell you to do. Mike, awesome, thank you on the 3.3 rocker answer. You're welcome, Mike. Can you do more videos on the Avenger 2013? I would love to do a lot of videos on a lot of these vehicles, but it comes down to subject matter. Back in the day, I would just grab my phone and start filming, and of course the quality sucked, but I was spitting out videos. The more I get in depth in these things, I try to do as best quality as I can. You start buying different camera equipment, sound, lighting, and you want to put on, like I say, a mini production. You want to get it the best you can, number one, so you stand out a little more. Two, so you cover more detail and everybody can see everything. And three, you're spending your time watching my videos. I need to make sure I make them as presentable as possible. So yeah, I'd love to do more videos on just about anything. The problem is finding the time these days, because a 15-minute repair literally takes me an hour or more just to film, let alone do the repair. And doing it during the day at work is getting harder and harder, so I try to do what I can either after hours or on the weekends here. Let's see. Love your videos, thanks. Appreciate it, Bob. Shelby Hemi. So yeah, that goes back to the Hemi. Hemi has, Shelby, let me go back up here and read that question again. I'm trying to think. Hemi, yeah, you're good. Hemi's a great engine, great, powerful engine. I mean, it's got a name, right? It's stood the test of time. People hear Hemi, they know exactly what you're talking about. Great engine. You should be fine. Worst thing I could see is maybe an issue, like I said, with the exhaust manifold bolts breaking. If they do, you'll hear a little ticking noise till it warms up, and then you know what you need to have fixed. Hey, thanks, Mike, for the answer. You're welcome. It's crazy the money I spent. I imagine so, man. You talking about engine, transmission, stuff like that. It's going to get up there real fast, real fast. I wish there was something I could tell you right off the top to try. But it's one of those having to get your hands on and coming across it while looking at it. 4.7 liter, there you go. 5 to 6, yes. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm getting some of these questions mixed up. Hopefully I covered them well enough as we were answering them. As I keep scrolling through, I'm getting some answers from you about your questions, so I apologize. Hi, David, you helped me a couple years ago with some warranty work on my 2013 Charger. Do you know if Dodge extended the warranty on the 3.6 liter motors? Not that I know of. About the only time they extended any kind of warranty on the 3.6 was with the left side cylinder head back when they first came out. They extended those, and it was only for the left side cylinder head. There's some coolant passage issues where I don't think the heads were cooling like they needed to, and we were getting burnt valve seats. Burnt valves, same difference. But nah, not that I know of. Shouldn't have any kind of extended warranty on the 3.6 liter engines, not themselves. Again, on my 2013 2500, I picked up blacked out wheels from a 2017. Will the TPMS recognize these sensors? I don't know the cross-reference on the years. That's a big difference, 2013, 2017. They may have changed, and if so, there's a chance it won't. If you still got your tires, hold on to them. I would just try it and see what happens. There's no harm in running the tires you just purchased, put it on there, drive it, see how it goes. It may take X number of miles before it actually picks up on it. And I mean, it could take a day of driving, depending on the situation. There's sometimes we can drive it out of the parking lot and the tire pressure sensors start reading. Sometimes I drive it 10 miles, sometimes I got to do more. So try that first if you still got your tires after that. Otherwise, you're going to have to put the sensors on. At that point, you got to pay to have them put on, of course. Swapped out. Wow, 15. Man, that's a lot. I'm sorry you had to go through all that between everything you spent already. Ouch. That's crazy, man. 15,000. 2013 Avenger RT 36 code P06DD. Change oil to synthetic and new filter the day the code showed up. It is triggered when the revs to higher limits and gears. Alright, that more than likely, from what I'm trying to picture in my mind, I had to research it, is going to be an oil pressure related code. Now, one of the things you can try, which may or may not help in this case, is an oil pressure sensor. I've done videos on that, on how you can replace it without having to take the upper intake off. You can actually get up in there. But there's a very good chance, and the most likely chance, that your codes are going to be related to the oil pump. The oil pump has the ability to change the output of the flow, and it's controlled electronically. There's a solenoid that goes onto the side, and it's got 2 wires coming out the block, and based on how that solenoid operates, it allows oil to go into different passages, and it changes the internal makeup of the pump to where the flow and the pressure and all are variable. Good chance something's gone on either with the pump or that electronic solenoid, and now you're not getting output you're supposed to at certain RPMs. Because we have to change the pressure because it's got variable valve timing. There's different things in the valve train that move independently, like the cam sprockets on the camshafts. They have the ability to rotate independently. So we need oil pressure to be high at certain times and lower at different times. And we can't do that on a typical pump that's driven by a chain or by the engine itself, because it's a constant output. Now we actually control it electrically so we can get a more finer, precise pressure that we need, and that's more than likely what's going on. It's not very common, but I have seen it. I've done about 3 of those pumps already. I've had another viewer online asking me about them, and one thing I've been wanting to do is get a 3.6 liter engine just to put on a stand so I can show you how to replace that pump, because to do the pump there's a lot more labor involved, but there is some shortcuts, and the shortcuts are kind of hard to show you without having an engine on hand to break it down, because I don't have the time during the day to show you that you can do it without taking all this off. That's why I need a 3.6 liter to put on the stand. Number one, I can do more videos such as that, show you how to take the valve covers off and let's do a right side head swap this time instead of left like I've done, and also show you the timing chain setup. So I definitely need to come across an engine. I hate to come out of pocket $1,000 just for that. Maybe someone to donate an engine, maybe a GoFundMe account. I don't know. Something to get us a 3.6 liter so I can show you these. But there are things they tell you to check for that code. There's oil squirters inside the engine that they want to make sure that the valve hasn't come off. Some bolts, make sure that they're in a certain place. Otherwise, it always boils down to usually the oil pump. I've actually got 2 of them. One sitting in the garage I've torn apart to see how it works. I got another one at work that I replaced. I wanted to show in a video as well. Just haven't got around to it. We're getting down to some last questions here, and these will probably be the last ones, and then we'll get ready to call it quits because we've been on here 72 minutes already. Wow. This YouTube thing's kind of cool. Like I said, usually I've done it on Facebook, but YouTube is the first time I've tried this. So far it's going well. Robert Wade, hi, I have a 2013 Chrysler 200S. Should lower front control arm vertical bushings be totally separated? Should lower front control arm bushings, vertical bushings be totally separated from the control arm? I don't remember in my mind right now how those control arms are set up. I'd have to look at it. I don't have problems with those. That's the thing. 200s, the lower control arms hold up great. If it was a patrol car or a caliper, a Compass or Patriot, yes. I don't remember exactly if those are supposed to be designed in the way that you're asking in that question, or what's going on there. So I'd have to definitely dive into it. Most control arm bushings are going to be solid. There's not going to be any splits in it whatsoever. The only time we see splits is something that you need to take off, like a sway bar bushing. Sway bar bushings will usually be where they got a split to where you can slide them over and put the plate on and clamp them. Usually most control arms you wouldn't. Now don't quote me on that without me doing some research. Jerry, 45 RFE. How do I know for sure that the solenoid is bad? P2706 limp mode stuck in third. In order to test solenoids on those, we have to use a transmission simulator. It's a little box that has jumper wires, and I say jumper wires, different plugs that go in both input speed, output speed, solenoid pack, and a ground. And basically what we're simulating with that is the internal makeup of the transmission. And we can command things with the scanner, and we want to see readings on the box to show us that it's getting a signal from the vehicle. The other thing we can do is we can change things on the box to show an output going to the scanner or the module. That's the way you're supposed to check it, and it's really the only way to test those items. But what I say based on experience, if you've got a solenoid related code what to do, I'd say put a solenoid pack in it. 9 out of 10 times it's always a solenoid pack. I'm not one to say throw parts at something, but there's the hypothetical or the theory or the diagnostics that people do or you need to do, and then there's the real world. Being at a dealership, I see things constantly. I can tell you what's the most common thing and what's not. In this case, I would say solenoid pack would be a good logical thing to jump into and to replace. If you do that, I think you'll feel pretty good about it. I think it'll come out fine. Now, when you replace that valve or that solenoid pack, you do have to drop the valve body, which it's not hard to do. I want to say I've done a video on that. Check my videos. There should be one about possible valve body replacement on that one. Then you would just have to unbolt the solenoid pack. When you go back, there's something they call a quick learn that you got to use a scanner for, and it samples the fluid. And it basically what it's doing, it's monitoring the solenoids to see how long they take to change when they're commanded. And based off of that, it can give you softer shifts versus you just putting it in. You may get some harder than normal shifts till it learns everything. Thank you. Thank all y'all. I really appreciate it. Awesome Q&A. Enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Last question right here, Robert Wade. If you take a pry bar, you can move the controller up and down quite a bit without the bushing moving. It's under impression it should move very little if all. For the most part, you shouldn't have much movement. Unless that bushing's worn out where the control arm's going through and you've got a lot of movement there, then yes, you may have a problem with the bushing. It's like I said, they hold up well. A lot of our suspension on our cars these days we don't have problems with. Anything's possible though. Then again, you know, down here in Georgia, what we have as normal conditions may be problems in a different part of the country. It's weird how that works. What's normal here isn't normal everywhere else. Thank you for your help. You're welcome, Robert and Jerry. Thank you. All of you, thanks for joining in. This is the first YouTube version of live that I've done. Sorry if I feel a little bit of rough here. I'm just trying to get back into the swing of doing this. Facebook Live was mainly the one I would do. But yeah, I wanted to try this. So all of y'all, thank you very much for doing this, for joining in, asking your questions. I love it. I wouldn't do anything else. I'm going to keep making videos. You keep watching. And you know what? Go and enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm going to about do the same myself. And check out more videos. Bye-bye.